Hi, this is Basic Folk, where we have podcasts with honest conversations and folk musicians. What's happening to me?
Conjunctions.
Yeah. Why is this so hard? Okay, welcome to Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with folk musicians. I'm Cindy House, and I've had too many edibles, apparently. Not right now, but like in the past.
In your lifetime.
In my lifetime.
I'm Lizzie No, and I don't know if I've had enough edibles in my lifetime.
Wow, you coming back strong with that. We are on the Bluegrass Situation Podcast Network. Total lilas to the Bluegrass Situation.
Oh,
total
lilas for sure. That means love ya like a sis to those who did not grow up in the like AIM and MySpace generation.
We need to bring back lilas so hard.
I'm working on it.
I think maybe our next fundraising gift can be around lilas.
Okay, good. I like that idea.
Basic Folk, lilas.
Lilas.
We are a listener-supported podcast, so if you want to make a contribution, you're always welcome to do so at basicfolk.com/donate. You can also go to our shop and get a handmade Basic Folk beanie. They are crafted with love from my mom to your little head. You can also sign up for our newsletter. One of these days, I'm going to send a newsletter out at the website, basicfolk.com, or you can follow us Facebook or Instagram at basicfolkpod. Lizzie No on all social media platforms.
That's me, Lizzie No, or Handsome Lizzie on Twitter.
Handsome Lizzie is dead.
That's true. Okay, so my handle is Lizzie No is dead, but my name is Handsome Lizzie, and we don't have time to get into it.
Oh, really opened a can of worms here. Didn't mean to.
Guys, I got hacked. I've been hacked.
Before we get into our guest today, I'm excited. I love this guy's music, Brian Dunne.
Obsessed.
Lizzie, what's going on with you?
Okay, I am reporting live from my sister's wedding week. As we are recording this, my sister is about 24 hours away from being a married woman. I'm out here in Southern California, and just before we started recording, Cindy was like maybe trying to scare me by saying like, it's going to be great. Plenty of things will go wrong at the wedding, and that's what you'll probably focus on. And I was like, you know what? That may be true of some people, but it's actually not true of me. And you know why? Because I'm a touring musician. I used to be like a super control freak, but once you tour like on an indie DIY basis, there are so many things that randomly go wrong that you could never have expected, that it really gives you a sense of acceptance. Like the number of times I've booked a tour, like early in my career, I would book a tour and then sometimes I would show up and like, not only did I not have any fans there, but like the venue maybe forgot I was coming, or like no one was there to do sound. Like, and then you just have to roll with it and like make the most of it. So I really have high hopes for my sister's wedding, because I'm sure that at the very least, like everyone knows that it's happening. You know what I mean?
Yes. If you're setting the bar that low,
yes,
I think you're going to be fine.
Another thing I'm excited about for my sister's wedding is that my partner and I are performing a song by Basic Folk alum Anais Mitchell. And I don't want anyone to get ideas. I don't play a lot of weddings. It's really like not my bag. But for my sister, you know, one last rodeo.
Are you going to put a secret message in there that's like, if you want to back out at the last minute, I will drive the getaway car?
I wasn't planning to, but that's a really sweet sentiment.
It's a very like Christina Yang, Meredith Grey.
100%. You are such a Grey's head. I love it.
Yeah. So I stopped watching the new show. I stopped the episode before Meredith leaves. So in my mind, she's still on the show.
I did that with Glee. I stopped right before I think they all like graduated and went to college.
It's not the same.
I'm sorry to make a mockery of something that's important to you.
Listen, some people hold Glee as high regard as I hold Grey's.
It's true. People are so weird about Glee. I thought it was a fun show, but I don't really get... I mean, there's so much drama around it, but...
Oh my God, speaking of drama, have you ever thought about what goes on in a propane tank?
Honestly, no.
Yeah, me neither. But I'm at our house in Maine that uses propane, and then I had this site visit from very nice man from the energy company, and he was like mansplaining propane tanks to me, and I was like thinking in my head while he's talking, I was like, is it really mansplaining if like I don't know what he's talking about?
No, I think that's just
about,
explaining.
But also like I don't care.
Oh no, then it's back into mansplaining.
I didn't ask for this. I'm not curious. I'm not taking in what you're saying. I just want you to stop.
That's definitely mansplaining. I wonder if the Webby Awards give out a distinction for the wildest segue in podcasts, because that little connection might have been a nominee.
Well, it just happened to me today, so it was top of mind.
Do you have more home ownership anecdotes, or can I share music news that I have?
I think if you're on the phone with somebody trying to get customer service for your house and they act like they don't want to help you, just keep going with it. It feels uncomfortable, but they can help you, and even if they don't want to.
Yeah.
And don't feel like you have to make any jokes to them to try to make them feel like they should want to talk to you.
Okay.
It's their job.
Thanks, Cindy.
Yep.
At the time that you're listening to this, dear listener, I, Lizzie No, have a new song out in the world.
What?
Yes, there is a compilation album called Warriors 2 that benefits EndoFound. It's the foundation that donates money to research and awareness around endometriosis. I put a brand new original song on this compilation, and there's some amazing femme and female artists on this album, like AJ Lee and Blue Summit, Jessica Lee Mayfield.
Great.
Yeah, it's a cool album, and you should go buy it. Search EndoFound Warriors, and you can buy the album. Should I introduce our guest?
Yes. Wait. Okay, yes. Please introduce the guest.
Okay. I am feeling #blessed and #grateful to be sharing today's interview with our listeners. Drum roll, please. Brian Dunne. Yeah. Is one of my dearest pals in the music biz, not to mention one of my favorite songwriters working today. Brian's songs are always clever and sincere, dark but fun, honest and imaginative. He's got a way with words, he's got a killer voice, and he's got big-time rock star vibes. These are a few of the reasons why his new album, Loser on the Ropes, his Kill Rock Stars debut, is earning this indie rocker critical acclaim and a ton of new fans. Brian is a New York-born musician who knew he wanted to be a singer-songwriter from the first time he saw Bruce Springsteen on television. After graduating from Berklee College of Music, fancy, Brian started making records and figuring out his sound. He's become a stalwart in the New York music scene, both with his own solo records and as a member of the super silly supergroup Fantastic Cat. Shout out to his bandmate and basic folk alum, Anthony D'Amato. In 2022, Brian got word that a live recording of his song New Tattoo, which had been recorded during a sound check in 2018, was climbing the charts in the Netherlands. His unexpected European star turn has not gone to this working artist's head one bit. In fact, he has delved even deeper into themes of failure and humility in his recent songs.
Very popular in the Netherlands.
So popular in
those
the Netherlands.
Topics.
True.
Yeah.
True superstar in the Netherlands. But what keeps people coming back to Brian's music is his hopeful spirit in spite of all the darkness. It's such a great interview. I love getting to interview people that I don't know, but there's also a special magic to finally getting to talk in depth with a good friend and like ask them those like deep journalistic questions. So it's a really fun conversation.
All right, we're going to take a listen to one of Brian's songs. Here's Sometime After This, and then we'll get to our conversation between Lizzie No and Brian Dunne on Basic Folk.
In a daydream you had made arrangements for pretty flowers late after the massacre. You woke in a starlit death. The Holy Ghost, the town is 10 find you well. If there was ever any lingering doubt, well, kid, just look at where we are right now. But on the precipice, sometime after this, we'll watch the changing tides to ride this false self-righteousness, where the truth is laid just up the stairs. I will meet you there.
Brian Dunne,
Lizzie,
welcome
no.
to Basic Folk. We have no time for pleasantries. Go back in time. When did you realize that you could sing?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't remember. I just feel like singing is not one of the things I've really ever thought about.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. I like
It's your job.
Yeah, that part of it, I don't know. I get more in my head about the guitar playing or songwriting aspect. The singing part, I don't know. Yeah. Sorry to start with such an ambivalent answer. Yeah, no, singing, I just felt like, I don't want to say it came natural, because I actually screwed up my voice pretty bad when I was in my early 20s and had to like get surgery and stuff.
You had surgery?
Yeah, I had a
Damn.
hemorrhaging polyp, and I was like bleeding, and they were like, you have to, and I was like, but what if I'm just raspy now? And they were like, no, you're gonna, but basically what I learned is like, don't think about it. I was thinking about it.
Yes.
You know, I was trying to sound a certain way that I didn't sound. But yeah, the singing part, I kind of just, I don't know. I just pull from my stomach, I guess.
Pull from your stomach. Okay, what was your first instrument?
I picked up the guitar when I was 5. I had begged for guitar lessons. Yes, I was cute.
Do we have any photos that we could share on the release date?
Yes, unfortunately, it was well-documented youth for me.
Oh my gosh, so cute. Do you remember like your early days of performing your own songs? What was the first time you were like, this is something I wrote. I wrote the guitar part. I wrote this melody. Like, this is my little thing and I'm going to share it.
I want to say I probably played a song of my own, probably very cringeworthy at like the talent show in high school or maybe even middle school. I definitely like played open mics and like played covers and stuff. There was
great.
there was like a tiny little venue near where I grew up that was kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It was called Boodle's Opera House, and it was in Chester, New York.
Chester.
Yeah. And it was a cool enough spot. Like I saw Levon there when I was a kid and stuff. And they had like an open mic on Sunday nights, and my parents would take me and I would perform. I hope to God none of that ever surfaces, because
I think if you're a real artist, you have some stuff that should never see the light of day.
Yes.
And that means that you've been taking risks. I think it's a good thing.
I don't know if like performing like a Bon Jovi song in a Hawaiian shirt is taking a risk, but I'm pretty sure like, 9-year-old me is, it's out there somewhere. It's on a camcorder tape somewhere.
That's precious. Do you remember when you first really heard Bruce Springsteen and like what that did to who you thought that you were?
Yeah. So I'm not particularly, we're going deep right away.
Yeah. This is Basic Folk, bitch.
Yeah. I usually like, for years I've sort of avoided even talking about like how my deep love of Bruce, because I feel like it's scary to people.
I know that.
Yeah.
But we're friends and it's time for it to come out on the pod.
Okay. I'm pretty confident. I'm not a mystical person when it comes to like music and stuff. I feel like it's a craft and you got to work at it. But I'm pretty confident that I died at a Bruce Springsteen concert in the early 1980s and was born reincarnated.
Whoa.
And I fell in love with Bruce was the very first thing. It's essentially the first thing I can remember. My parents were like moderate Bruce Springsteen fans. They had seen him once and they had a copy of The River and a copy of Live 75 to 85. And I just took to it instantly. And I've been in love with it ever since that day, obsessively, mildly obnoxious about it.
I'm from Jersey. You can't scare me.
Yeah. Yes. Luckily, I have found a wonderful crew of people here who understand my affliction and share it with me. So that's nice, because I thought I was going to be alone forever.
Oh my God. Okay, so I feel like your fandom for Bruce Springsteen goes beyond just like, I love the music, I admire this person. I have a sense that you have an ongoing engagement with Bruce's catalog that informs how you think about yourself as a songwriter. Can you talk about that? Like, where are you at with it now? Like, is there a particular Bruce album you're listening to a lot these days?
That is an excellent question, Lizzie.
Thank you.
Very well worded. Yeah, I think that the things that we, latch onto as musicians, the other music, it's that thing where you get something from it that's brand new every time, right? And I mean, I probably listened to Born to Run like 500,000 times, right? But I still find new things in it. So, to answer your question about a specific album, I just finished that Warren Zanes book on Nebraska, which was fascinating. And
hey, Warren Zanes, we'd love to have you on the pod.
Yeah, great. Maybe one of the best rock writers out there right now.
Yes, and a very cool guy. I played a poetry event where he was part of the backing band, the Muldoon's Picnic, and I was like, I really do not deserve to be here. These people are really good.
You absolutely deserve to be there. But I was thinking a lot about that record this past week because I'm starting to, well, I know we haven't touched upon my latest record yet, but I'm starting to crack the book back open. The album came out 2 months ago, and that's like that weird moment where you go like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah, like you mean as far as like digging into new stuff?
Yeah, and so I think that like an album like Nebraska, what always captures me about that is the internal voice of that record, how he's and he was essentially singing to himself, and I feel like that's a really good place to start from if you're starting. Because a lot of times when you're starting to write for a record, you're asking your own self like, what am I feeling right now? What do I want to say, and how do I feel about human life on Earth? And I don't know is the answer right now. So I'm gonna sort through that with probably a bunch of bad songs, and then hopefully we'll get to the good ones.
And then you hone it in.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about music school. What was your focus, or did you have a major at Berklee? And how do you think the way that you spent your time there influenced the musician that you are now?
There's another thing I shied away from talking about, but let's get into it. Yes, I did go to the Berklee College of Music, and I did graduate from there with a degree that I have no idea where it is. But I will say this. It was, there's a lot of like, I don't want to say there's stigma, but people like to be shy about their time at music school because, one, I think people make too much of a meal about it, and two, it might, infer that you're sort of like a music robot and, have some sort of soulless mathematical equation working in your head that, provides you with songs that are very linear and sort of round. I
think we can both agree that that's not you.
I like to think so. I hope so.
To the listeners listening, Brian is my friend, and I don't think of him as a music robot. And I'm genuinely interested in what, that education did for you.
There were probably times. There was definitely some things I had to unlearn after. But I will say this. I think that 18 is a lot younger than it used to be. And I think if I'd have shown up in New York City and tried to attempt what I attempted at 21 here, I think I would have bottomed out in a pretty seismic way. And it was really nice to go to a place where you could sort of fail for a couple of years in an environment that invited. I mean, listen, it was still very competitive and felt you were aware that you were being judged and watched, but it was a little bit safer of a place to figure out what it was I wanted to say. And it was good to just be around that high capacity of musicians all in the same place because it just made you kind of get your... Are you allowed to curse on this, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it just made you kind of get your proverbial shit together.
Yeah.
Even just by virtue of knowing that, like you were going to class with a song and Liz Longley and Ken Yates were going to be there and you wanted to make sure that was tight,
I'm scared of those guys.
Liz and Ken.
Like if I'm trying to do a warm up, like I warm up to like singing along to Liz Longley records.
Well, Liz,
the girlies are not doing it like them.
Well, okay, so Liz was a year older than me at school, and you come in sort of brazen and bold, and you think you've got it all figured out. And I remember the very first time I realized I needed to get a lot better, and it was the first time I saw Liz Longley play. She played a song called "When You've Got Trouble" that she had just written.
So great!
It's such an amazing song, and it was one of those honest moments where the voice in your head is like looking for any excuse you have, and you just don't have one. And I remember standing there in that room and being like, I don't have anything that's even kind of this good. I need to go home right now and get started on the rest of my life.
Isn't that such a great feeling? I love when I go to a show and I'm like, I got to go home and practice.
Right. I'm searching for an excuse everywhere. Maybe it's the jeans. Maybe it's the lights. Maybe it's the sound. Oh, the sound in this room is really good. Maybe they're just really good.
Yeah.
And you need to see it as like lighting a fire under your ass, and you need to just go and woodshed and get better and, try to show up a year later and stand toe to toe with them.
Interestingly, Ken Yates is a Basic Folk alum, and he said something similar about you.
That is very
When I
sweet.
asked him
Hi,
about
Ken.
Berklee, he was like, Brian Dunne has always had his shit together. And I was like, I get that feeling.
I think that's so funny because I so don't. But Ken was funny because Ken, that sort of was Ken's story. Ken was trying to be a guitar player, and Ken's a great finger-picking guitar player, but you don't want to throw Ken a solo. He'll laugh out loud if you go, Ken, take a solo. And he had written some songs, but he was very shy about them, and we had to like essentially talk him, me and this other kid, Jordan, we felt like we had to essentially talk him into pursuing this. We're like, you're really good, dude. Like, you don't know it, but you're really, really good.
He's one of the people I listen to the most. I think he makes the best sounding records.
Ken I send all of my songs to Ken, and he sends all his to me, and all our records are signed off on one another's. Like, he picks the track listing on all of my records, and I like to think I pick his, unless we really get down to brass tacks and there's something one of us feels really strongly about. But I trust Ken more than I trust myself with judgment on songs. But it is so funny that sort of so close to the time that we left, he was still sort of unsure of his own abilities, and sort of a testament to his own, he almost like doesn't know his own power. Mm-hmm. And I remember us just sitting in a room being like, Ken, like, this is pretty serious. Yeah. He needed new jeans, though. He was wearing very baggy pants at the time.
Well, those have come back around.
Yeah.
So I know
Ken wasn't wearing them in that way.
I know you didn't want to talk about Berklee, but just to like pat myself on the back, we've now uncovered like a major through line in all of your work, which is you show up somewhere with high expectations and sort of like a complicated relationship with your own ego. Yes. And then you have to let yourself disappoint yourself and then find some friends that are going to help. Yeah,
you have done the work more than I have.
That's you.
That is precisely it. Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't feel good, those moments where your ego gets destroyed. But that's where the good work happens. Mm-hmm. And it's also liberating, right? Because your ego is everything that stands in the way of good art,
Amen. Okay, I want to talk about Selling Things, which is, I read a review that said it was a criminally underrated album. I have to agree. What makes a good political song?
To me?
In general, like as a listener. Because there are a couple of really good political songs on Selling Things. And I want to know, like, who do you listen to when you're trying to figure out, like, what's going on in the world today?
Yeah, that I asked myself that same question. So, when I first got here to New York, I was writing the sort of heartbroken 20-something songs a man writes when he's doesn't know what to write about. Yeah. So he writes about love. And don't get me wrong.
I love the pregnant pause. He writes about love.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we would call it that, but because I was like a young single 20-something without a story. I quite literally remember opening my notebook and being like, well, I'm not interesting, so I guess I have to conjure up something, because all I had was a career that was a non-starter at the time, and I was living in the east side of Manhattan in a room that was like, it only had a twin size bed in it. It could only fit a twin size bed. And I had to leave the door open because my body heat was too hot for the room.
I have a lyric about that type of New York moment on my new album.
Where you're like, my body is creating too much energy for this room. So we need to leave the door open. So I was writing a lot of like sort of love sick, songs. And, time went by and I wanted to grow as a writer. And by the way, I'm happily married and I will write about love anytime I get a really good idea about it. But I think that for me, just in the wide breadth of songs about love, you have to have something really interesting to say if you want to approach the topic, because it's all been said, man.
It really has.
You got to have something new to say. And I don't think, not to disparage anyone who likes my early records, but I don't necessarily know if I was saying anything particularly profound about love other than like, I love you, why don't you love me back, you know, kind of stuff.
But you know what? People need that.
It's a universal
People need
theme.
those things, yeah.
I've always said I sort of base my songs on what would be interesting if somebody sat next to you at a bar and told you a story, because it's fascinating what is interesting and what is not interesting.
Wait, can you give some examples of each? What's something you thought would be interesting in a song but wasn't, and what's something you thought would be like whatever in a song and turned out to be profound in your own writing?
Yeah. Okay. So like, it is fascinating that even after all this time, if you are sitting in a bar and somebody sidles up to you at the bar and they say, I just got dumped, you're not going to be like, get me out of this conversation. You're
dying to know.
You're going to be like, what happened?
Yes.
Right? Vice versa. I don't know why this is, and maybe I can be proven wrong, and there's definitely a couple Warren Zevon records that discuss the topic. Health issues are so important.
Yes.
Your health is so important. It's so essential to your life. It's all you have. Yet, I don't know why songs about health issues are not interesting.
That's so true.
I don't know. Obviously, there's the last two Warren Zevon records, but he was dying. That is profoundly
Dying
interesting.
is everything.
But for whatever reason, when somebody makes a record about like, maybe, I don't know, they had like a stomach thing,
A health scare.
And I don't know why your eyes just sort of glaze over and you're like, oh, okay. and it's the same reason that if somebody sidled up to you at the bar and they were like, oh, I just have like terrible IBS, you'd be like, I don't know. It's not like,
I don't care.
It's not, you go deal with that, but it's not, I don't want to hear about it.
I feel for you, and we don't really need to talk about it. Yeah.
So I always am thinking about that. And I think one of the reasons that there's so many songs about love is that it's just interesting, right? And when I sort of looked at my career, which had been met with like sort of a resounding, I thought, okay, well, what do I want? I want to say something that's, if nobody cares, then I might as well, say my truth. So to answer your initial question about like political songs, I think about this a lot because there are a lot of political songs that feel like what my friend Hess calls DNC rock, which are just sort of
talk about it.
Yeah, just sort of speaking to sort of broad, like liberal talking points that, look, I'm a communist, all right? Like
same comrade.
Yeah, exactly, right?
But you never want to hear a political song that has too many words with syllables more than 3 syllables, or that end in ION, like, division.
Division. What a word.
Like racism, disenfranchisement.
Right.
Like, you just don't want to hear something out of a textbook.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but it just always feels to me like, well, that's immediately just with that language, you're preaching to the choir, because that's who's going to listen to it is instantly people that agree with you.
Right.
I've always thought the mark of a good political song is a song that someone can listen to who's from the other side of the political aisle and doesn't know that you're necessarily like skewering them right under their nose, because I don't want it to speak in such broad terms that they might think I'm siding with them. I don't know if I'm speaking about this well. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I feel the mark of a good political song is if I could sing a song right in front of a Republican that skewers a Republican and they can't deny that I'm speaking some truth,
Yeah, I mean, you have to make it universal, because I think that's what makes a good political song effective, is it's actually compassionate and reaches out to people. You know who does that, I think, like better than almost anyone these days, is Adeem the artist.
Sure.
Like, a lot of their songs are pretty universal and like you tap your toe to it regardless of your political affiliation.
Yeah. Adeem, I wonder if their crowd is from the other side of the political aisle at all, because I always find it fascinating, especially like in our very troubled times.
Yes.
Where the lines are drawn. And what I mean to say is like, I'm also not trying to mince words, right? I'm not trying to play to the middle.
No.
But I want to write songs that are so pointed and observational that maybe someone could be tricked into changing their mind.
Yes.
And I don't think you do that with broad generalizations or the classic Tony, my wife, always points out when we go to sort of like a big mainstream concert, there's always a song during the concert where the artist plays like a video of stock footage of just kids who look different. and
kids who are sad, and maybe they have like a little
Yes.
bit of dirt on their face. Maybe they're like sort of waving like a flag.
Yeah, it's bizarre, and it's always to sell you like a new song.
Yeah.
That's like on the new album. And Tony pointed it out to me, and we were like, "Does this all come from the same like video house?" Because I've been to 3 different shows at the Beacon that all had this same sort of video play, and it's what it is. It's I agree with the broad generalizations of it.
But it's knocking you over the head in a way.
Yeah, and as a writer, you're like, well, let's do one better. Let's say something that hasn't been said before.
Yeah, I think the more specific you can get, the more interesting it gets these days, now that so much has been said. I want to read a quotation from you around the Selling Things release. "The darkness in these new songs," Brian says, "comes from writing them when he was enduring really difficult emotional and mental problems. I wanted to talk about what that felt like. Each song is a reckoning with things that eat at me personally or things that eat at me existentially." So normally when you release an album, you share all this new content, and then you have a touring cycle, which at least for me can be really cathartic. Like you get to kind of be in conversation with your audience about these difficult topics. So how did you as a person like deal with not having the catharsis of touring, Selling Things, because it's a super personal and really deep album that came out in April of 2020?
Short answer is poorly. I dealt with it poorly. It's funny for you to read that back to me because I haven't heard that in a couple of years. And now I feel like so many people have talked about their mental health issues. At the time, I felt like I was being super candid, but I feel like, and maybe that was the goal we were all trying to achieve, is like normalizing that, like, look, we're all struggling, you know? Because now when I hear you read that back to me, I'm almost like, yes, all songs are like, this was driving me insane.
Sure.
And so I tried to make something good out of it, you know? Because that's the positive of all songs, right? Is that like, even the saddest song in the world is a happy song because you chose to make something.
Right.
Writing a song is inherently an optimistic act. You're thinking, well, maybe this could be something good for somebody, right?
And here I am to tell the tale.
Right. Even the darkest sad song, it's like, well, you survived by virtue, you're singing this song. But yeah, I had a real, like, sort of break in my late 20s where I had spent just a lot of time in a car by myself, touring, and I had a lot of just stuff that I never looked under the hood of. And, I think that for a lot of musicians, a lot of people set out, they don't feel good. You don't feel good. But you have this idea in your head, like, but when I achieve all my goals, then I will feel good.
Yes.
And it's weird. It didn't flare up when things were going really poorly for me. And as soon as they started I started, getting some opportunities, getting tours and started developing a following. The moment that I realized I didn't feel different, I actually kind of felt worse.
Yes.
It really freaked me out. And it wasn't anything, like hyper dramatic. I just went through a really dark period where I had to go, see a bunch of therapists, and, I spent some time on the pills and, kind of got my head straightened out. And ultimately, I think the realization I needed to come to was like, they're not going to replace you with a smarter or more wise guy. Like, it's you forever. I think when I was young, I thought that, like, when you get older, you get voiced by a different character.
Nobody's coming to get you.
Exactly. Precisely. Yeah, like they replace you with the older version of you that knows stuff.
I keep waiting for that.
No, it's not. It's you forever.
Yeah.
Just different versions of you, but it's you. And I think that I had a bit of a reckoning with that. Sorry for that tangent, but yeah, essentially.
I really appreciate your being candid about that on the podcast, because like social media gives us the illusion that we know a lot about the artists that we listen to. And you can really start to feel like you know somebody once you've listened to their music and you kind of see what they're up to day to day on tour. I think that there's a lot of deeper questions that are getting missed there.
Right.
So I think it's a real gift to share, like, what actually goes into, like, what does it feel like to actually share of yourself with the world? And like, when is it not enough,
Yeah, I mean, it feels really weird, right? Because, like, especially I come from a family that's very working class, and like, if my mom and dad are listening to this, I don't mean anything by this, but like, everyone needed a therapist, and no one got one.
Oh,
know?
Oh yeah.
I'm
familiar. Yeah. I've seen that movie.
and I don't just mean my, like everyone, it's all untreated.
Yep.
So I had a lot of like weird feelings about sharing that kind of stuff. I wrote a couple of essays on things I'd been through. And I felt very naked, but what I will say on the other side of that is, and maybe even though it's well-worn territory, that maybe the point of it is that, it doesn't feel unique to say. And that made me feel very comforted because even though, yes, a lot of albums have come out and been like, this is about my mental health crisis. I'm like, fuck yeah, man. Like, that's what it's about. Like, we're trying to relieve ourselves of something with these songs and create some sort of catharsis out of like a dark period of time. And those are all my favorite records, and I think it's cool that now it's sort of obvious to say like, these songs were born out of a darkness in my heart. And I was hoping to shed some light on those.
Speaking of moments where suddenly your reality shifts and then you adjust internally, do you remember where you were when you found out that new tattoo was charting in Europe? How has that changed your trajectory? For our listeners, Brian had a 4-year-old song. It came out in 2018. Yeah. And then years later, it became a hit in the Netherlands, correct?
Yes.
And it has led to a ton of new touring and new fans. So like, what has surprised you about your European fans? What has that done for how you're thinking about your career now?
Yeah. Well, the answer to that question is that I was sitting right in this very spot that I'm sitting right now, which is in the center of my couch right here.
We're in the room where it happened.
You're in the room where it happened. It was very uneventful. Somebody just texted me like, I think you have a hit in the Netherlands. And I was like, fascinating. How? What song?
What?
But, and it's been a huge thrill to go over there and like play big shows. I played an arena in October, which I did solo acoustic. Yeah.
Solo arena show.
I'm gonna give myself the, go to my Instagram, instagram.com/Brian Dunne Music. If you're using the desktop version. My takeaway from it is don't get in your head about the release of music. Just put good stuff out there and it'll find an audience, never on time and never the 3-month period where you necessarily need it to, but it will find its way to people. It's very bizarre. It happened in a very strange way. Essentially, a guy named Danny Vera had a radio show, picked it up on his radio show. He himself had a big hit song in the Netherlands, and he started playing it on his radio show. The radio station picked it up, then a bunch of the other radio stations picked that up. It was very 1976.
That's organic, yeah.
Right. And I went over and did a tour. I went over and did a bigger tour. I did some support stuff and with this new record. And the thing I learned from it, because that song I wrote for selling things and then I wasn't going to put it on the record. And actually what happened was I was playing this show in Michigan and a film crew showed up to the show, to the sound check and they were like, hey, we'll film you playing a song.
That's always great. Content, y'all.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to do anything with this song. So I just finished it and I'd sent it over to Sarlo and he thought it didn't quite fit on the record.
Andrew Sarlo, your often collaborator?
Yes. He produced Selling Things and he didn't think it fit. I didn't think it fit. So I just played it at the sound check and they sent me the video of it. And I thought, oh, that sounds pretty nice. Yeah. It's always those kinds of things.
Yes.
And still that song is the audio from that video.
Really? Ooh, that's a good, is that an exclusive?
Yeah, I don't know if I've talked about that.
Basic folk exclusive.
Yeah, it's just like the reverb on the track is just the reverb from the hall. It's at the...
Yeah, it's a great sounding record. I mean, I think that makes it very special because it sounds so immediate. It really is, what is it? Was it Ani DeFranco? This is a record of people making music in a room. It's a great song. It's one of those things.
It also does beg the question... Do I need to be spending all this money on my records?
I didn't come here to be bullied.
Yeah, no, precisely. I mean, listen, it hasn't stopped me. The last two are the most we've ever spent on records. So I didn't learn my lesson at all. But yeah, it's just, that's a song that's just a story and it's me in a room telling that story.
Cool.
And I don't know. I think maybe that song, because it was so free of any association, it just sort of was a story I was telling about how sadness manifests in people. I was amused by the idea that our generation would have quarter life and midlife crises that looked different than our parents, but were the same, where they might have bought a Maserati or redid the kitchen cabinets. We will get a new tattoo.
Right. But we still don't want strings attached.
Yes. And we are, not to like over analyze because it was just a little story song, but I think that I was getting at this idea that like we are up against the same pile of shit that every other generation is, the same existential pile of shit, which is you're going to get older and you're going to feel weird about it.
Yep.
No matter what you do, no matter how you color your life.
And
no
even
matter...
if you're so successful and surrounded by friends and community, like you're going to have that, like, did I make the right choices at all these checkpoints?
And if you tell yourself you're not going to be exactly the way that the previous generations of your family were, that's fine, but you're not getting out of here alive, you know? So it's just going to have a different color to it, but it's going to be the same struggle.
Wow. That's beautiful. I'm going to listen to that in the car on the way home with that in mind. Okay, what was the first song that you wrote for Loser on the Ropes, your latest album, recently released on Kill Rock Stars?
Yes, very good pitch. The very last song on the record I had, but I don't think of it as the first song that I wrote. Because I finished, that was just one of those songs that I sort of danced upon. I was like out for a jog one day. I was living up in Greenpoint, and I just got the melody in my head. I wrote it down, and I thought, oh, that's going to be the last song on my next record.
Oh, nice.
But it was almost like writing the epilogue to the book you haven't written yet. To me, the first song that I wrote was Rockaway, which is the third song on the record. And while I don't like to think of the record as a pandemic record, that's a song that's definitely colored by the existential struggle that was the early pandemic, which is what is happening? What is my purpose? Have all the things I've been working for been turned to dust overnight? And what is this dystopian time that I'm living through? But I tried to write it in such a way that it wasn't necessarily just about the pandemic. Rather, it was about disillusionment.
Yes. My mom's from Rockaway, and I feel like the vibe is very Rockaway.
Thank you.
There's like a sort of scrappy hopefulness to it. Okay, so my stepson, Ames, hi Amesy, has a question for you. He said, how do you produce your music? How do you get it all set up? So I would like for you to do maybe like a mini song exploder, not to like steal tricks from other podcasts.
I love this.
But like, can you walk us through Rockaway? Like, how would you explain to Ames how you went from I have an idea to I have a demo to I have a song to like I have a full recorded song?
Yes, this rolls. Let's get into it.
Great.
This is for you, Ames. Okay. I wrote Rockaway. I went to, it wasn't just like, I actually was at Rockaway when I got the idea. I was standing on the beach. It was early May. It was like a unseasonably warm day. And the first thing that dawned on me was sunbathers in surgical masks, right? And I was like, well, that's
wild.
Right. And it was the first thing that, you know, I can sort of be a false optimist at times, and I was definitely one of those people in March and April that was like, we'll get through. Well, this will be
just hunker down for a couple
this will be
weeks.
all right. Yeah, like they called me. The last album came out on April 10th, and they were like, you know, my manager called me and was like, do we want to delay? And I was like, no. We'll be fine. And it was the first time it truly dawned on me that things were going to be different for a very long time, and we would be different emotionally for a long time, and. So I had the idea that I wanted to write a song about this sort of real emotional crisis against the sunny backdrop of Rockaway Beach, which is a place that I love, and feel very like close to.
Yes.
So I came home and I sat on my couch and I wrote the song, late at night, and I wrote, the first thought I had is this too many verses? Because I think it's 5 verses, and 4 different choruses, like 3 of the choruses are the same, but there's
there's an alt chorus.
Yeah, there's an alt chorus.
By the way, like, Ames, cover your ears. I spent my entire 20s scaring the hoes by being like too depressed and weird. And that little chorus really like speaks to my heart.
Oh, thank you.
Like,
yeah.
I find you very attractive, and I feel that I'm too weird and dark to be around you. And I'm going to kind of, I'll see myself to the door.
I don't think, I'm going to ruin this if I tell you what it is actually going on in my head.
I don't think you want to know me, but I would love to know you.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what I was getting at. Yeah. And I came home and I demoed it up, and I had a lot of time on my hands because of the aforementioned pandemic. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to cut any of this. I'm going to write it all up and demo it all up, like with all the arrangements. So the original demo has a very similar drum groove. It has, questionable synth horns. And
so you programmed all of these.
I programmed all of it.
Instruments.
And then I went, and I remember specifically saying to Tony, who had just walked in the room, I said, I've been working on this song for 48 straight hours, and I'm pretty sure I hate it. So then I just bounced it and I sent it to Ken.
Okay.
And Ken hit me back and he was like, I love it. And which Ken doesn't really say often. He usually goes like, well, yeah, it's kind of this or it's kind of that, and maybe this could be tightened up. And I usually take his word as the gospel.
Yes.
And do those things and send it back to him. But he was like, I love it. And I probably still have the email where I'm like, are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure this is insane. This is like an insane run-on sentence about all the thoughts in my head. And okay, so I have this demo, and Ken says he loves it, and so that feels like a stronger opinion than my own. So this is now the first song that I've written for the record. I sit on it for a while, and you know how it is. You sort of build a list of songs, and as you write more and more songs, things get thrown out and taken away. But this song just kind of, it kept staying in there.
I can't relate because I never am able to write enough songs to be. I maybe will cut like one song every record.
Really?
I mean, I'll spend years writing just one song.
Our buddy Matt Susich is like that too, and I always admire that sort of like. That's sort of, these are the ideas I'm going in with, and we're going to just make them perfect. Because I sort of like write a couple hundred songs and whittle it down, and most of them are real bad,
Cool. Can't wait to dig into those archives.
Yeah, no, I
hope I outlive you so then I can release them posthumously.
No, yeah.
On your behalf.
Like my first wish in my will would be like burn all the voice memos.
Who was it that got that tattoo?
Anderson .Paak has that tattoo, right?
Do not release any posthumous albums.
Yeah. No, I totally felt that. So I had the demo, and then we had this mystifying experience, which I went down to the studio in Athens, Georgia. I worked with Drew Vandenberg, who produced the last two Faye Webster records that I really liked. So I wanted to work with him, and his main rule was, I don't want any demos. Like, I want you to come in and play the song for the band, which was an excellent choice for me because it's infuriating, because I'm a total control freak, and I will run away with every part that everybody's playing. So then I was left with the odd conundrum, which was like, I want this song to have the same arrangement as the demo because I feel like the song sort of hinges on the arrangement. But if I do that, I'm going to have to use my words. So I sort of talked everybody through forgive me for using the word, the vibes of everything. And we landed on something that sounds oddly close to my demo, but we got there by sort of explanation of intention.
Wow.
Yes, yeah. So
wow, conversation worked?
I guess so. I was really frustrating.
It's still possible?
Every turn I wanted to be like, can I just play you the demo? And Drew would just be like, no, you can't play the demo. You have to explain it. So we cut it. We mixed it and mastered it. And it was mastered by Sarah Register, who's done my last couple records. And yeah, that song, it's funny. I wasn't sure how that song would be received, but I feel like it's sort of emerged as one of the tracks that, we didn't put it out as a single or anything, but it's emerged as a track that people sort of have referenced. Every review that's come out has talked about that song.
Yeah, it's a hit.
Thank you. It's a very long hit. Yeah. And yeah, I was thinking about a specific song that I love. It doesn't sound a lot like the song, but there's a song called Harmony Hall by Vampire Weekend. Yep. And what I love about Harmony Hall is that it's sort of a song about a dystopian existential nightmare, but it's set against the backdrop of this very sunny music. And to me, that is that juxtaposition almost makes it feel more harrowing. Like when in a movie, when somebody finds a dead body in the middle of the day, or like, did you see what's the Florence Pugh movie, the
Midsommar?
Yeah, Midsommar.
Oh,
Jeez,
yeah.
I don't know.
Scary.
Escape my. But the fact that like it's all in broad daylight makes it more terrifying.
And it's in this like minimalist, Scandi, elegant environment that like is aspirational for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. So I felt like that was the type of song I wanted to write, because that was how it felt during that time. Like, how can I be so confused and deeply disturbed on this beautiful day, you know?
Let's talk about optimist. Like, are you naturally optimistic? How does your engagement with philosophy and philosophers impact your outlook?
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay hopeful? What's going on in that song?
Well, Optimist featuring Lizzie No, by the way.
Oh my God, who?
The only feature on the album.
Voice of a generation, some are calling her.
Yeah, this podcast is an inside job. Yeah. You guys should know. So Optimist is the last song I wrote for the record, and I was sort of looking for a song that summed everything up. Like, what was I getting at with this? Which is that I think the album is sort of a chronicle of all these different personalities I've tried on over the years. And to land back on, I think I'm just an optimist, was so disappointing because it's so basic.
Not in 2023.
Well, that was sort of what I was trying to work through in the song, which is, I think that all of this was just because I'm a man standing in front of a beautiful day trying to feel good about it.
Yeah.
But I'm terrible at it. I keep falling off for like years at a time. I forget that I'm an optimist. And it was also sort of noting that optimism feels like it has diminishing returns, and it gets harder each year. You know, it gets harder to get back on the horse, and the things that used to, you know, pick up your spirits don't. So I was sort of, the song sort of chronicles this very strange time where it's almost funny, where you look in the mirror and you're like, huh, really? After all those hats and all those
You're
personalities.
Still a hopeful dude.
Yeah, and it's and sort of what I was getting at by naming the sort of dark philosophers was not to like sort of get into armchair, you know, 101 philosophy in whatever Nietzsche and Schopenhauer mean to you, but rather...
We'll do that on a different podcast.
Yeah, but rather just sort of like to illustrate the point that like, yeah, I thought I was a dark philosopher, a cynic at some points, and all it made me was insufferable to be around. I think the truth is, at my core, I'm trying to just feel good about this life that we've been given, but sometimes I feel like I know too much or I've seen too much, and it's very hard to continue to be a fighting optimist. But that's what that song's about.
Right. And I think that kind of goes back to your earlier point about how sometimes what you think is going to be boring actually turns out to be profound, and, you know, vice versa. Because it would never occur to me to write a song about like being optimistic, because it's like, ugh.
Right.
But it's actually a really nuanced song, sonically and lyrically.
Thank you. When I finished it, you know how when some songs you finish and you go, that's a good track 3 or that's a good track 6 or whatever. And some songs you finish and you go, I don't even know if that's good, but I know that's what I want to say. Yeah. And I feel so strongly about that I'm willing to stand with this song, whether people like it or not. I know that is what I've been trying to say on this entire record is, what have I learned? What am I trying to do? And what I'm trying to do is figure out how to feel good again. After all that we've been through as a nation, as a globe, also as a person, and even down to my own personal bullshit in this career that we call music, you know, which, you know, sends you through the ringer and back again.
Yeah, for the listeners, I just rolled my eyes deeply with recognition and resignation. Would you say that this album has a particular point of view on death?
Yeah. I think some songs qualify it as relief.
Yes.
But yes, there's a lot of bratty energy coming from those particular songs, though. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, so Jackson Browne is, to me, one of my favorite writers, and that you wouldn't be surprised to hear that by listening to one of my songs. But I think that Jackson Browne is, I don't know if I'd use the word underrated, but rather like misunderstood maybe because I feel like Jackson Browne is sometimes associated with like 70s California soft rock, almost like Eagles adjacent.
Chill dad vibes. Sometimes.
Yes. And I think that Jackson Browne writes about death and existence better than just about any of his peers. And albums like Late for the Sky and a song like Before the Deluge, which is a song that I was sort of using as a model throughout this record because it's a song about this sort of dystopian nightmare, but it's written in beautiful terms where it doesn't feel right, because that was the challenge for all writers writing a record between 2020 and 2022, which is how do we write about current times without making it about the pandemic?
Yeah.
You know? And
because it can turn people off.
Right. Or it just dates your record. Like, think about how many bios you're reading right now when you get pitched artists for this podcast that are like, this is a pandemic record and, you know, it was written in isolation and lockdown.
Believe it or not, they sent tracks back and forth.
You're not going to believe this, but the producer and the artist actually had to email back and forth. And you just like, you see the word lockdown and you like, your brain is immediately like, just zones out. But you also want to write about current times the same way our favorite songwriters wrote about Vietnam when Vietnam was happening, or wrote about the Reagan years when the Reagan years were happening. And I was thinking about songs like Doctor My Eyes, which are about, you know, Vietnam, but they're not about Vietnam. Yeah. They're not like that kind of sort of like just sort of specific aesthetic. He's writing about
and I feel like, sorry to interrupt you, but like back to talking about what makes a good political song not boring. What's going on? You know, to me, Marvin Gaye is the greatest American artist ever. And What's Going On is the political song to me.
Exactly.
That song hinges on talk to me. Right. It's not just picket lines, picket signs. It's like, we've lost the ability to communicate. We've lost the ability to look one another in the eye. And that's the bigger issue.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, we don't know what's real anymore, and we don't know each other anymore. Right. It could be written today. It could be written 50 years from now.
And that is that line you dance on when writing about current times in politics is like, where do you cross over into broad colloquialisms where you're saying like, love is love and, you know,
love wins.
Yeah. And then you're just sort of, you're just a home goods wall stencil, you know? But you also, I don't want to speak in such specifics that the album feels like, oh, the imagery is just masks and vaccines and, you know, things like that. So I was thinking about all of that because we had nothing but time to think.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh. Remember when we had like just become friends and we ran into each other at the vaccination line?
Yes.
This is like a New York ass podcast.
Yeah. We ran into each other at CVS getting our second shot.
Like, oh my God, it's my new friend Brian Dunne getting vaccinated.
Yeah.
I have other questions about this album, but I'm going to skip them because there are some deep things I want to talk about regarding friendship. So, Fantastic Cat. It's your supergroup.
Something of a supergroup is what we call it.
It's a supergroup. I have seen like trustworthy news outlets call it a supergroup.
That's true. We have tricked two very trustworthy news outlets to call us a supergroup by saying that we are something of a supergroup and seeing what they do.
That's why I keep saying I'm the voice of a generation. I'm the next Bob Dylan.
Hell yeah, it works.
So are there sides of yourself that show up in Fantastic Cat that you don't really get to shine a light on in your Brian Dunne solo life?
Absolutely. Fantastic Cat is very silly. And I you know, embrace silliness on my records, but Fantastic Cat is very silly.
Super silly.
Yeah, I think that's what it is for all of us. And, you know, it's liberating because a band can hold more, what am I trying to say? It can carry more, like, you can take chances. Because when your name is attached to something, it sort of beckons the question, who is Brian Dunne?
Yes.
What is he saying? And with Fantastic Cat, it's what is Fantastic Cat?
And you're literally wearing masks.
Yes. That's true too. But it also, you're always thinking as a solo artist, what if this song is the first and last song somebody hears by me?
Oh yeah.
And with the band, it's an entire aesthetic philosophy. So it can hold more bizarre excursions into the absurd.
Yes. Who do you think is the audience for Fantastic Cat?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, who do you think is the best one?
Well, who is the best one?
Don.
Yeah. I was going to say Don as well.
Who do I think is the audience for Fantastic Cat? Well, it's a combination of the four of us. By the way, Fantastic Cat is myself, Don DeLego, Anthony D'Amato, Basic Folk alum, and Mike Montali of Hollis Brown. And the audience is interesting because it's a combination of the four of our fan bases, but also we've sort of developed our own zany little fan base. We put out a record last summer, and we all wear velvet suits, and we play sort of bizarro folk rock music that's sort of like, I like to think of it sounding like maybe a classic rock record that where something was wrong with the record player or something.
Yeah. That's very funny.
Yeah. So that's, and we're hard at work on album 2, and we're trying to like extend upon that idea. But yeah, so it's been really, it's kind of like what we were talking about with the new Tattoo song, which is like the best things that have come to me in my career are when I sort of let go a little bit, because I'm a control freak and I have a tendency to squeeze things too tight, and I have a lot of songs about it. And that was sort of my intention with this most recent record, Loser on the Ropes, which is to say, like, if I'm on my back, if I'm already lost, then fuck it. Let's be honest. Let's speak, you know? Yeah. And I like to think that I was able to conjure up that spirit a little bit, but with Fantastic Cat, I can just hold it looser. You can take a few more chances. I let things in that I normally don't let in. There's definitely songs I've written for the band that have jokes in them that I probably would have edited out of solo material, but I'm like, I think the band can hold this joke.
Yes.
You know?
And I feel like the agreement of Fantastic Cat is commit to the bit.
Commit to the bit.
And one another.
Yes.
It's moving to see live. Speaking of friends, you and Tony have a lot of queer friends.
Yeah.
And you are on Kill Rock Stars, which to me is like a queer institution. Do you find the word ally useful? Do you think of yourself as an ally? What does that look like in your life?
Yeah, I do think of myself as an ally, but I also am very, I always want to make sure that I'm not, sort of like occupying space that isn't mine to occupy. I'm super flattered that I get to sit at the Kill Rock Stars lunch table. And I try to be super respectful of the space I take up over there, because Kill Rock Stars does sign predominantly queer artists, and I am a cisgendered man and
a diversity hire, some would say. I can say it.
I mean, yeah, I'm definitely normie passing,
Like in 30 Rock when Jenna and her boo are normaling.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I guess that's us. Yeah, it's something that I think is really important, and just something like, for instance, Kill Rock Stars, I had this really strange situation where I was almost signed by a very mainstream Nashville label.
Oh boy.
And I had no reason to not sign. And it was a good deal, and I had lawyers look at it, and it was a good deal, but I just knew I felt like they wouldn't understand me, I felt like there was potentially a backwards hat in my future. Yeah. And I walked and I ran as hard as I could in the other direction. And I reached out to Kill Rock Stars, and instantly they were like, I could feel that Slim and Portia were kind of like, well, why would you want to be over here? Right. And I sort of, just like anyone in a bit of a crisis, I was sort of like, I don't know. I just want to, this is where I belong. Right. And Slim took a real shine to me and, believed in my songs but I was surprised that they signed me, for sure.
Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
can.
Like knowing you as a friend and also as an artist, I feel that, and I feel this for myself too, whether or not you identify as LGBT plus, queer spaces, I think, are more understanding of emotional nuance, the different identities that each one of us has, the different facets of people's personalities. Like, complexity is welcome and celebrated, and I feel like you have an instinctive sense of that. And it can be harder to be emotionally mature and open in a straight dominant space, especially as a man. I don't know if you would agree with that, but like there's an expectation for like male guy with a guitar, man with a guitar, that maybe you can kind of get around in a queer space. Does that feel true?
I think absolutely. And I think, you said it really well, and I would just add to it. I've always wanted to make music for people who felt like they weren't insiders, you know, and because even though, you know, I know that I look like just like Basic White did, and I accept that. I own a mirror.
You are a special snowflake. Wait, was that the review that you got? A Fantastic Cat that like even the one guy with a normal, like a banker haircut is really good. Am I making
There was actually an insane YouTube comment that I don't want to like put the guy totally on blast, but he basically like, it was essentially something of the vibe of like, bros like you and me don't get enough respect. And I just like showed it to Tony, and I was supposed to get a haircut that day, and I was like, Tony, I'm not going to get this haircut. No. She was like, don't let this send you on a journey. No. And I was like, this is really upsetting me that this man thinks he and I are one and the same. No, but I've always felt like I wanted my songs to be for people who just felt misunderstood. Mm-hmm. And so perhaps that's a reason why I have been drawn to those types of spaces. But yeah, realistically, I don't know. I just go follow my nose, and that's where it's led me. And now being on a predominantly queer label, or I don't know if they would call themselves a predominantly queer label, but I would say at least 90% of the acts on Kill Rock Stars identify as queer. I just want to be a good ally and be helpful and not a pain in the ass.
What a beautiful sentiment. Do you have time for a lightning round? It'll be quick.
I got nothing to do.
Okay. Which of the following is most important to you in a song? Rhythm, chords and chord progressions, lyrics, or melody?
Lyrics.
What is your favorite type of pie?
Apple.
You are a normie. You are a normie.
I know.
Okay.
As soon as it left my mouth, I was like, oh, I could have said something so much better. I also love strawberry rhubarb. Mm-hmm. Do I get any credit for that?
Strawberry rhubarb is so good. Okay, what is your favorite brand of shoe?
I am enjoying a Red Wing Iron Ranger right now. I have 2 pairs.
What is the best time of day to write a song?
5 o'clock.
AM or PM?
PM.
What is the best age to be?
Ooh, 29.
29. What is your pre-show drink?
If it's a solo show, I like a bottle of wine, a whole bottle of wine, a glass of wine.
Okay.
But maybe a bottle of wine. And if it's a band show, I tend to go for a tequila.
Mm-hmm. What is your post-show drink?
A nice cool down beer.
Mm-hmm. What would you be doing with your life if you were not a musician?
Probably something equally irresponsible, like being a comedian or, I don't know, a mime or something. I don't think I would exist I think I would be the worst employee ever.
I've played in your band. That might be true. What, in 10 words or fewer, what does success mean to you?
Well, that's changed a lot over the years, and I think about it a lot, but success means having full artistic autonomy.
And finally, what is your cat, Sid's, favorite genre of music?
Silence.
Oh, and there he is sleeping right now like a little angel. Brian Dunne has just released a monster album, Loser on the Ropes. I cannot tell our listeners strongly enough to buy this album on vinyl, stream it, share it with a friend. Thank you, my dear friend Brian, for being my guest on Basic Folk.
Thank you for having me, Lizzie. You're the best.
No, you're the best.
No, you're really good at this.
Thanks. Did we get that in the recording?
Yep, I got it.
Woo!
This episode of Basic Folk was produced by Sarah Wardrop. Basic Folk is on the Bluegrass Situation Podcast Network. Our music is produced by Alex Stanton. You can find all of our episodes wherever you get podcasts. You can search for us on the SiriusXM app under Basic Folk, or you can check out our website. Could you tell that was me, or did you think it was AI?
I could tell that was you. I would know your voice anywhere.
BasicFolk.com is our website. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. You are spectacular. Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.